Now let's go back a few years to 1885, just to see the legalistic nature of the ministry at that time, the focus they had on the law of God. So there was Smith, there was George Butler, and you might remember a name by a person by the name Canwright. He was considered the most able evangelist of that time in the church, and he was very influential. At that time he was still preaching in the Adventist church. Later on, Canwright apostatized, and he became a bitter opponent of the spirit of prophecy. He in fact wrote books and things about attacking Ellen White, and he was a real enemy of the church and the truth. But at this time he was preaching for the SDA Church in 1885 in the church in Battle Creek, which was the main center of the work, the General Conference. Now, the church in Battle Creek was able to hold 3,000 people in this church. And they had like an evangelistic series with 32 lectures for the public. And this was the very first time that they were going to have this in Battle Creek in such a scale. And so all the newspapers around that time, around that area, they came and they reported on the meetings that were taking place in Battle Creek Church there. In fact, one of the newspapers actually published word for word each lecture that these brethren preached. Now, the lectures that were recorded in this Battle Creek Daily Journal. And this was a secular newspaper. And this is what this Battle Creek Daily Journal printed, where the doctrines of this people as presented in new light for the first time. Unfortunately, justification by faith was not mentioned once. The whole focus of their lectures was presenting prophecy, the law of God, and the perpetuity of the law of God, that it is still in effect, the Sabbath, Daniel's prophecies, Revelation, the sanctuary. Those were the things that were focused on. Justification by faith was not mentioned. And I find this interesting, that this was the great effort that was made for the public at that time. This was in 1885. Now let's jump forward to 1881. Back a little bit further to 1881. Now James White became very ill, and this was the year he died. He was on his deathbed, and he said the following to Sister White. Sister White was by his side holding his hand, and he said the following: "I feel assured there is a crisis before us. We should preserve our physical and mental powers for future service." He obviously was hoping to be healed and revived, but he says the glorious subject of redemption should long ago have been more fully presented to the people. James White recognized there was a great lack in the message of the church, in the presentation of the church, of the message. And what was that lack? Redemption. The message of redemption was lacking. So Ellen White, at that point in time when her husband died, she determined as never before that she would focus her energies towards this. And she prayed that God will bring a new energy into the church. In 1882, she wrote a testimony to Battle Creek Church. And she wrote, "God will work a work in our day that but few anticipate." This was a testimony written for the leadership of that church, General Conference President. God will work a work in our day that but few anticipate. He will raise up and exalt among us those who are taught rather by the unction of His Spirit than by the outward training of scientific institutions. This was prophesied, a prophecy, in 1882.